So, because some of you hate me and want me to suffer, you've asked me to respond to a video by someone named Redeemed Zoomer, who is a Presbyterian Minecraft YouTuber. And he's made a very popular video about how math proves God. Let me pull it up here. Yeah, so the odds are if you're seeing this live, I'm going to like chop it up and repost it, I'm kind of a control freak. I don't like to like do live streams. Yeah, but I might open it up at the end of this video. So if you stick around, maybe I gotta channel my inner Nathan and have like an open hangout kind of thing. Yeah, we can talk more about that in the when we get there. But yeah, if you're seeing this live, this might not stay up. I might have to like repost it after I edit it. Because the thing is, I just don't want to make a whole like script. Like I don't want to write out my thoughts to this video because it just doesn't warrant that. And but I will do this live stream. So yeah, I guess let's get started and find out why math proves God. Oh, and if you guys could just let me know in the comments, like it seems like you can hear me and everything, but my internet is running slow. My computer is responding really slowly, and if it gets too bad, I might just like do this another time. So just let me know if it's like choppy or something. Yeah, because there's like a storm coming out here, and my internet's just been a little bit choppy today. So,
does God exist? Many atheists think there's no reason to believe in God because we have science to explain everything in the.
Okay, so I'm going to pause this a lot. Sorry in advance for that, but some things I want to agree with, but most things I want to not agree with. But okay, so he says, some atheists will say, or atheists say, there's no reason to believe in God because science can explain everything in the universe. So I certainly don't say there's no reason to believe in God. That was basically one of the mistakes I talked about in the atheist mistakes about epistemology video. So of course there are reasons to believe in God. There are also reasons to not believe in God. And, if you think about like how dogmatic you'd have to be to say like, yeah, there's this controversial thing, like this, vexing issue. And there's literally no reason to think that I'm wrong about this particular issue. Unlike basically every other issue, there's no reason to think that my side is wrong about this. Or my opinion could be wrong about this. It's like, no, there are obviously reasons going for and against whatever it is you think, and this is no exception. So if you are an atheist who says there's no reason to believe in God, then you're just wrong about that. But yeah, then this argument, because science can explain everything in the universe. I guess if I were trying to steelman this, it would be like the best version of this thing he's alluding to is Oppie's argument from naturalism, where it's like, well, look, we have a natural explanation for all the stuff in the universe. And the natural explanation is going to be ultimately, on the whole, simpler than the supernatural explanations. So we should favor the simpler explanation. So there's no reason to, or not there's no reason, but like we should be atheists, we should be naturalists. I mean, so that argument makes some amount of sense to me. Like, but anyway, this is just like, it's not even right to call it a straw man. I'm trying to think of like the best version of what he could mean when he says science can explain everything in the universe, therefore God doesn't exist, or like there's no reason to believe in God. Yeah, the argument would instead go like there are natural explanations for everything in the universe. Like the natural explanations are going to be simpler according to like most, metrics of simplicity, like simpler in kind, like simpler in number of adjustable parameters, so like it's going to be simpler on the whole, and we should really, really care about which explanation is simpler, I guess. And that's why we should be naturalists. So, yeah.
Universe. It's true that science
I'm so good at live streaming.
Is able to explain the natural world, that's what it's for, but by definition, science cannot tell us whether there's anything outside or above the natural world. In other
Yeah, that's incorrect. Like almost there are some real crazy assertions coming up. I've seen this video in advance, but like Just the idea that like science cannot, in principle, by definition, you know, lead to any supernatural thing, or like it's just that doesn't make any sense to me. Like if you're looking at someone from the Discovery Institute who's arguing for intelligent design by appealing to science or something, like I don't think they're just confused about definitions. Like I think they're wrong about a lot of the things they say, but I think it would be a pretty weird objection to like, oh, all these Discovery Institute people, they're just confused about the definition of science, which in principle can't point to anything supernatural. So like, I mean, first of all, I can imagine a world not like our world where science would incorporate like supernatural entities into explanations, and like that would just be ordinary science. Um, and secondly, if science is in the business of explaining the natural world, then assuming the natural world is going to look different depending on the supernatural and its nature, then like why wouldn't science be able to point to that, at least in some way? Like if you think God exists, presumably you think the natural world looks different than it otherwise would, so like I don't see any reason to think like, oh no, by definition science can't point to anything supernatural. Why not? um yeah, and besides just saying like, oh, by definition, like there's not going to be like, this bifurcation between supernatural and natural. You're not going to get like a perfect definition of natural and like a perfect conceptual analysis of supernatural where it's like, okay, we have like the clearest possible understanding and definition of these two terms, and now we can just sort them. Like that's not how those words even came about. That's like, you know we know what they mean because we know how to use them. We can like categorize things as natural and supernatural, and maybe there are some edge cases, like paranormal things or something. um but like there's not a perfect conceptual analysis of supernatural where it's like, oh well, you know how those terms came about, natural and supernatural? Well, people sat down, philosophers sat down and came up with like a perfect definition of those concepts and then applied them very in a principled way. It's like, yeah, that's not how those terms came about. So why are you even looking for a perfect, flawless, counterexample free definition of those terms? Like the bifurcation is useful, like I think it's a totally useful bifurcation, but it's like you can't get too hung up on the fact that you can't define these things perfectly. So anyway, just even this distinction he's making where it's like, well, science does one of these things but not the other. It's like, well, maybe we could doubt that just on the basis of the fact that there's no perfect conceptual analysis of natural and supernatural to begin with. But additionally, I can imagine science like incorporating things that we typically designate as supernatural into their explanations. Why is that not thinkable? Why is that unthinkable? And yeah, we could also just say that the natural world is going to look different depending on the existence and exact characteristics of the supernatural world. So yeah, I think he's wrong about what he's saying here.
In other words, whether there's anything supernatural. Generally, when people speak of God, they mean a supernatural, all-knowing mind who is everywhere and can do anything. So what is math, and what does it have to do with God? Math is about numbers and information about those numbers and ways numbers connect to each other, but where do we find all this math? We can't see math, we can't touch math, we can't taste math. Math is only in the mind. We find it simply by thinking about it and figuring more and more things out. But wait, math also explains things. Math can explain everything from simple counting to the movement of planets. For anything you can think of, there's a bunch of math that explains what's going on, even down to the atomic level. So if math is only in our minds, but it also explains the natural world, then where does it come from?
That's a hell of a sentence, dog. If math is only in our minds, but it also explains the natural world, then where does it come from? That sentence is that's a wild sentence, dude. So, okay, math is not okay. You are correctly pointing out that we cannot taste or hear math. However, I can smell math. But we can't, okay, math is not only in our minds. Like just because we know about math by thinking about it, you correctly point out that we know about math by thinking about it. Like the only reason like look, I have mathematical intuitions and that plays a huge role in my mathematical knowledge, but that epistemological question doesn't really, like automatically lead you to this answer about the ontology of math. Like, yeah, epistemically, we learn about math through the intellect. Like we think about it. We have mathematical intuitions. That doesn't mean it's only in our minds, or only in a mind. Just because we know about it by using our minds doesn't mean that it only exists in our minds. That's just like you're just mixing up epistemology and ontology there. And just the idea like, oh, math explains stuff in the world. Okay, yeah, fair enough. But you have to be careful about what you mean by explanation. But anyway, you just shouldn't mix up mathematical ontology and epistemology here and say, well, because we know about it, not through like ordinary empirical observation, but we know about it by thinking about it and using our intellect and rationality or something. It's like, okay, that doesn't mean it only exists in our minds.
There's two possibilities, really. One is that math is just something we invented to explain what we observe in the natural world, and that would mean the origin of math is natural. But the other possibility is that math is already there because it controls the universe and we've discovered it. And if that's true, then the origin of math is supernatural.
Another hell of a sentence. We, like, okay, I'm fine with this whole like distinction between, oh yeah, we either invent math or we discover it. Sure, that's fair enough. But then saying like, if we discover it, then it's supernatural. That's weird. I mean, you seem to like, because like at first I wasn't sure if I even wanted to respond to this video because I'm like, oh, I don't know anything about philosophy of math. And then you see stuff like this and you're like, okay, well, I know more than that guy. Like, um, like a standard form of mathematical realism is Platonism. That's not considered supernatural. It transcends the natural world. There are these abstract objects, that are robustly real, but nobody calls them supernatural. They're non-natural. But yeah, I mean, just going from if math is discovered, therefore it's supernatural is a pretty weird step in and of itself. But then just saying like, okay, math controls the universe. This is what I was saying when I'm like, you have to be careful about what you mean by explanation. Math doesn't control anything. Like it doesn't have causal properties. Like it doesn't have causal influence, like it's just math doesn't cause things. I don't know what, um, if I'm trying to be like a little bit more charitable, like, okay, maybe he's not denying that math is causally effete or that abstract objects are causally effete. When he says control, he means it in like a very broad kind of sense. Okay, well, if that's the case, if I'm interpreting it that way, then it's just false that if something controls the universe or controls something, then it's discovered and not invented. Like it's really easy to think of social constructs or things that we invent that wield control. Like, I think it's totally obviously correct to say that banks control things. They have control, right? Like banks have some amount of power. Contracts control people. Like all these things have control in the world, and they are social constructs. Banks are social constructs. We invented the banking system. Like social construct or social contracts are constructed. We invent them, but they still have control. Okay, so it's just not true that if something has control in the universe, then it's discovered, not invented. That's not true. Yeah. So I mean, I do think we discover math for what it's worth. We don't invent it. And I guess like why do I think that? I think that because we don't seem free to impose whatever mathematical structure we like on the world. And when I say that, I don't mean like 2 plus 2 can just equal whatever we want. Like, oh, because 2 plus 2 can't equal whatever we say at this exact moment, therefore it's discovered, not invented. That would be like a really crude version of what I'm saying. There still might be like implications and entailments of other things we've said or like more foundational axioms or what have you. But still, there should be more freedom if math is constructed and not invented. Like we should be more free to impose different mathematical structures on the world. if math is constructed and not invented, right? But we're just constantly bumping up against the stubborn objectivity of math. So that seems to lend some support to the idea that we're discovering things and not just constructing them or inventing them. Yeah, and that's not to say like, oh, we can't just. I mean, he makes a point like this a little later on, so we'll cover that again in a moment. But that's one reason, and I guess another reason is, I mean, surely we can agree, like mathematical realists and anti-realists, we can agree that a very desirable feature of our theory of math, like our ontology of math or whatever, we want the result that something like 2 + 2 = 4 is true. We want that to be true. That's very intuitive. And further, we want it to be true in a very straightforward way. So we want stuff like 2 + 2 = 4 to be true, and we want it to be true in a very straightforward way, not in a way like, well, you have to adopt like this really weird theory of truth and then it's true, or you have to adopt some like fictionalist like stance towards it and then it's true. It's like, okay, hopefully we can agree that it would be most desirable to have a theory where stuff like that is true and it's true in a very straightforward way. And I, like I said, I assume the anti-realist would grant that, but they would say like, you know, what do anti-realists say? Like, there is a problem with how we know about this kind of stuff. You know, like there's this problem of epistemology, like how do we know about abstract objects that have no causal effects and that sort of thing. So then they think, well, sure, that's desirable, but we can get rid of that if realism just brings about too many problems. But as far as I know, like I haven't looked into this, but I don't see how it's a huge problem, this kind of like epistemological issue. You know how people always use the companions and guilt argument, like they argue from math to like moral realism, like these kind of stand or fall together. I mean, I think that that's like a good way of thinking about the issue in many contexts. And I feel like it must work the other way. So like I have thought a little bit more about moral realism. So if it's true that these things stand or fall together, then I'm probably committed to some kind of mathematical realism.
Here's why the latter option is correct. Math contains infinite information. There's an infinite number of numbers, each with their own individual properties, and there's an infinite number of numbers in between any two numbers. And we keep discovering things. Pi, which is the number that explains the area of a circle, has an infinite number of digits that we keep discovering by doing calculations. If we were just making this stuff up, we could make pi be whatever we want it to be, but we can't do that because we know that that's not true.
Yeah, so that's what I was talking about a little bit earlier. Like, this is like a very crude version of what could be a good argument. Like, yeah, math seems pretty stubbornly objective. We can't just make up, we're not free to just impose whatever mathematical structure we like on the world. Now, I don't think this is a very good version of that argument because I don't think it's true that like if something is fictional, you can just say whatever you want about it at any time. That seems to be like a persistent confusion with this guy. Is like if it's a, fictional, excuse me, then you can't say anything false about it. If it's fictional, you can't say anything that's not true. But like if I say Harry Potter is a unicorn, that's not true. Okay, so you can say false things about fictions. And like I mentioned earlier, there can still be like implications and entailments of other things you've said. So I don't think it's the case that like, no, you can just make up whatever you want if mathematical realism is false. No, I mean, it's true that you should have more freedom. Like if mathematical realism is true, then you are not free to impose different mathematical structures on the world and construct things differently. And if anti-realism is true, it seems like you should have more freedom in constructing things differently. It doesn't mean anything goes. It just means you should have more freedom and you won't be constantly bumping up against the objectivity of math because it's constructed. We could construct a different mathematical system just like we could construct a different banking system.
We know that all this information is out there somewhere, but it can't be in our physical universe because our universe is finite and math is infinite.
Why Why does he just say that like it's a fact? Like it's just an established fact that the universe is finite. Like, where did you come by that information that like space is finite and time is finite? Do we know that? No, we don't. Why are you just asserting it like it's an established scientific fact that the universe is finite?
That means math contains every possible combination of numbers, and if we use numbers as code for letters, then math contains every possible combination of letters as well. That means every book that has ever been written already exists encoded in math somewhere. In fact, every book that possibly could be written already exists in math. And
Smokes weed for the first time.
if we use numbers as code for particles and their locations, then you could say there's an exact copy of our universe encoded in math. But there's also more stuff in math. So that's why math can't possibly be contained just within our universe. But that's just the beginning. There's many pieces of evidence in math to show that math has a designer. Here's an example. One time someone discovered that this simple equation makes a very interesting shape when you graph it in the complex plane, and this is called the Mandelbrot set. But people have analyzed this shape and have found some very scary things about it.
Some very scary things about it. Oh, dude, you gotta warn me before you show me a Mandelbrot set.
What's amazing about the Mandelbrot set is that you can zoom in infinitely and you'll keep finding new things. Over here, you can keep finding more and more copies of the Mandelbrot set.
Terrifying.
That no matter how far you zoom in. You could even zoom in really close to something like this, and it takes a while, but look, there's another little baby Mandelbrot set. Alternatively, you could go into this region and find completely different things. On the left side of this thing, you'll find these weird elephant-shaped things that have spirals that go on forever, and you could even zoom into the side of one of the spirals and find new spirals that repeat infinitely and keep generating new infinite patterns like this. Or you could go on the other side of the elephants and find these weird seahorse-shaped things that have different kinds of spirals that are connected to each other, and once again, they keep going on forever. You can zoom in infinitely, and you'll keep finding new patterns, but like I said, it's a different type of pattern. Seriously, anytime you explore the Mandelbrot set, you can find brand new things, possibly things that no human has ever seen before, because like I said, there is infinite complexity and infinite information in this one shape. That's why this little shape is so scary. We did not invent
I cannot relate to the emotion you're having right now when you say that it's scary.
this because we discovered it by accident.
I think it's like pretty awe-inspiring. Like, I don't know, sometimes I'll watch like a number file video or something, and that stuff is so cool, but scary.
But we did not discover it in our universe. It has infinite complexity, so it can't possibly be in our universe because the universe doesn't have infinites.
Again, why why do you keep saying these things? Like, the universe doesn't have infinites. What? Why do you think that?
We discovered it just by calculating it. So where the heck did this thing come from? Basic common sense says that someone designed this, but no human designed it.
Basic common sense says someone designed this. No, it doesn't. Does it? Basic common sense says someone designed this. I have literally never heard that before. I have no idea what you mean. Like, I can see it with like a cell or like some biological stuff, but like, have you ever noticed that like when you square something, it gets bigger? Basic common sense says someone designed this.
Like we said, math only exists in the mind, so its origin must also be a mind. Math contains infinite information, so this mind must be all-knowing. Math controls the universe, so this mind must also be all-powerful.
I mean, what the fuck? Like every inference here is like insane. But anyway, math does not exist only in the mind. You're mixing up epistemology and ontology, I think. And then what was that last one? It controls the universe, so it must be omnipotent.
This, but no human designed it. Like we said, math only exists in the mind, so its origin must also be a mind. Math contains infinite information, so this mind must be all-knowing. Math controls the universe, so this mind must also be all-powerful.
I mean, literally every single sentence is incorrect. Like, none of that follows. It contains infinite information, so it must be omniscient. Why couldn't it just contain infinite information and not be omniscient, like some of this mathematical stuff, you know? Or like it controls everything, so it must be all powerful. like, again, math doesn't control anything. It doesn't exist only in the mind either.
And math is beyond and outside of our natural world, so this mind must be supernatural. And we have just
Oh my God.
described God. All these numbers and mathematical facts exist in the infinite mind of God, but it's not just mathematical truth that exists in the mind of God, but also moral truth and any kind of truth at all. Goodness, truth, and beauty are just mere opinions of the human mind, unless there is a supreme mind, God, who overrules all human opinions. Because math is beyond time, space, and limits, the existence of math proves the existence of God because math is in the mind of God. As the great scientist Galileo...
I feel like I only have to repeat back what he says and be like, well, that's a non sequitur, right? Like, I don't know, but this has millions of views, so I don't know.
Goodness, truth, and beauty are just mere opinions of the human mind, unless there is a supreme mind, God, who...
Yeah, see, listen to that sentence again.
But also moral truth and any kind of truth at all. Goodness, truth, and beauty are just mere opinions of the human mind, unless there is a supreme mind, God.
Yeah, so you're an anti-realist about goodness and morality. You are a subjectivist. That's what my last video was partly about. I mean, like, how could it not be clearer? Like, when you have this kind of unrefined presentation of like divine command theory and divine conceptualism and that sort of thing, like, it is so obvious that this is just a form of subjectivism. Sorry, let me just play that sentence again because it's just amazing to just hear it put that bluntly, where it's like, yeah, man, you're a subjectivist.
God, but also moral truth and any kind of truth at all. Goodness, truth, and beauty are just mere opinions of the human mind, unless there is a supreme mind, God, who overrules all human opinions. Because
And he said truth in general. Like, there's no truth in general without God. Like, what do you mean? There's no way that things would be if God didn't exist? Like, this is something you hear from, like, I don't know, not even apologists really, but like, you know, if your aunt is arguing with you at Thanksgiving or something about God, then it's like, sometimes you'll hear this kind of thing like, well, there's no truth without God. It's like, well, I think truth is just like the way things are, right? Like, we're just, correspondence to reality or something approximating that. You're saying there's like nothing that would be the case if there were no God? Like, there's nothing that would correctly describe reality as opposed to incorrectly describing reality? It just makes no sense. Like, there would be no truth without a mind that overrules human opinions.
Math is beyond time, space, and limits. The existence of math proves the existence of God because math is in the mind of God.
I mean, if you say like anything that satisfies these, I mean, no, like, again, numbers are, I mean, I know this is kind of like getting into what his argument is, but anything that's like eternal and infinite or whatever outside time, then that proves God. It's like, well, I mean, numbers satisfy that description. Like, maybe sets or like other abstract objects, possible worlds, properties or something like propositions. Like, I mean, it's just not true. Like, I don't know. I'm just sort of at a loss for words after a certain point. Like, why do you think that? Like, why one of these things, like every sentence just like comes from nowhere. They don't seem related to the previous thing that you said.
God. As the great scientist Galileo said, math is the language with which God has written the universe.
Yeah, well, that's
maybe this is Mandelbrot set back to basics. I need your help though. Can you think of
maybe we should watch a number file video just as a palate cleanser. That was horrible. Yeah, so wow. Here, let me post the invite link. I'm really channeling my inner Nathan here. I should not do this, but whatever. I don't know how to pin this. Oh well. So there's the join link. If you want to come in, I don't know. I don't really have anything else to say about that video. It's just really stupid. There was one thing that I pulled up here that I want to share. Present. Okay. So I saw this the other day when it had only a few hundred likes, and now it has almost 3,000. Yeah, this is like, okay, this is kind of incredible. So the body of Saint Francis Xavier, a Catholic missionary and co-founder of the Society of Jesus, is enshrined in the Basilica of blah, 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 blah. So anyway, this guy died a long time ago, and he looks like this. So this is like given as evidence that like, um, I don't know, God exists, because this is like, incorruptibility. So like Catholics and Eastern Orthodox, they have some of these saints who like they decay very slowly, and they think that that's like a, you know, proof that God is like miraculously preserving them. And it just seems like, I don't know, like I saw this and I was like crying, laughing, like just at the word incorruptible. Look at this person. Like, he's not incorruptible. He looks very corrupted. Now, like, granted, he is decaying extraordinarily slowly, and it's like he's mummified or something. That's crazy. That's really cool. That warrants scientific investigation. That's totally abnormal. But like, just back up and think about this for 1 second. Like, is God miraculously, divinely, like preserving this person from corrupting? Is that really the best explanation of that dude's face? No. Like, how does anyone think that? How are there 3,000 people who think that? Anyway, Kevin's coming in here. Kevin, can you hear me? I can't hear you. Anyway, this is the kind of thing that's like actually interesting. Like, yeah. Rob says, I was struck by how incorrupt this looked. I mean, God must have been kind of mailing it in when he was like, making sure this guy was like divinely, miraculously preserved. Yeah, I can't hear Kevin either. It's a thing on your end, I think, because you're not muted for me. Bye, Kevin. So, one reason I like never do these live stream things is because I'm kind of a control freak, and I like to plan out what I'm going to say and like write it out and plan it out. And, even in the process of editing the thing I already wrote, it's like I don't like it and I edit it even more. And when I do stuff live like this, I'm bound to say things that I don't. I just didn't say it the right way, or I left something important out, or I like, changed my mind and thinking about it more. And with these kind of live streams, there's no chance for me to work through it. I'm kind of like a really slow processor. I need to like sit there and think about it for a long time. I'm not really good at like, if you just like the stuff that like Nathan does when he brings someone on and like argues with them in real time. Like, I am not good at that. So anyway, oh, he's back. I have audio now.
Hey, so you can hear me?
I can hear you.
All right, awesome. So I joined because you were talking about something that I'm reading about right now. So have you heard of the book called The Unnecessary Science?
Nuh-uh.
Okay, so it's a philosophy book, and it's about natural law. And it's all about, like, are you familiar with Ed Feser, the philosopher?
Yeah.
So it's just like a, hey, look, this is why Ed Feser is wrong about everything that he writes about, kind of. And this video from Redeemed Zoomer struck me as very like Thomistic. And these things really bother me because so I grew up trad Catholic. So I grew up in like a little Catholic cult that my grandparents founded, and it was like very hardcore, like mass in Latin. I went to mass 6 days a week. So like all of these things, like they like really bother me. And so like watching you get bothered by it too, kind of like, obviously I'm not happy that you are bothered, but I did feel a little bit vindicated by the fact that like you also found this a little weird.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and a lot of the like Thomist and Tradcath stuff, like, because I was like so Protestant growing up, and like Catholicism was like, you know, if you were really nice and ecumenical and liberal, then you thought Catholics were also Christians, and like that was like, so like a lot of the like Thomistic stuff, and just like stuff that any Catholic seems familiar with, is just like totally foreign to me. So like whenever I bump up against Thomist stuff, I'm like, what the fuck is this? And like other people like grew up hearing stuff about it, so I'm kind of like unfamiliar with it. I'm constantly directing people to Majesty of Reason to like deal with it, because it would be like learning a new language or something. But I do think there's something worthwhile there with like the Aristotelian stuff, and like I'm like getting more interested in Aristotle, which kind of like brings me around to like thinking that Ed Fazer, instead of being wrong about like 98% of things, is wrong about like 90% of things. But that's like a general trend for me lately.
Yeah. It's, what's crazy is that, so in like the church my grandparents founded had a school in the basement, and I went to that school. So I wasn't technically homeschooled, but like my parents and my friends' parents were the teachers, and my graduating 8th grade class was 4 kids, including me. So I was essentially homeschooled, but we were taught like Thomism, like in school. And what's funny is that we couldn't even find like textbooks really. So we would either buy Protestant textbooks, but then cross out the word revolution in Protestant revolution and write revolt in its place, because we were the Catholic version of you guys. Like we were like, okay, Protestants, they probably are technically Christian, but they're all going to hell because they're wrong. Seriously. And then like for our religion classes and stuff like that, we would like learn about like Thomism and stuff. And it's like I grew up with this stuff, and like you hear it over and over and over again when you're a kid, and it kind of like makes sense to you. You're like, yeah, like things have like forms and essences and stuff. And you're like, yeah. And like if that's all you've ever heard, it sounds normal. And then you go to public school for high school, and you're like, wait a minute, like nobody else was learning about like, Aristotelian forms and stuff like that. And you realize it's just like not part of like the scientific or philosophical landscape. And then like, things start moving for you, at least they did for me. So I just always feel very vindicated when people like you take a look at like Thomism and stuff like that, and you're like, wait, what? Like, why does none of this make sense?
Yeah. No, I was just reading, I finally read Fazer's The Road from Atheism. Have you read that blog post?
No, I don't think so.
It's really interesting. He's like he basically talks about how like he did have the same view that I had, where it's like, what the fuck is this? Like, this doesn't map onto anything. And like, obviously now his view is more like, this is where things went off the rails, is when people stopped, like the modernist, like scientific revolution and everything, like where we rejected final causes and like Aristotelianism, like that's when things started going badly. But like I was reading his Road from Atheism post, and he gradually like became more and more sympathetic to this like kind of Aristotelian Thomist like internal language and everything. But there were also like these weird points of agreement between me and him. Like one of them was really specific, and one of them was more general. Like one of them, I didn't realize this, but he wrote his PhD thesis on Russellian monism, which is kind of a like obsession with me, and like about how Hayek, I guess, the economist, was like kind of a structuralist, like in the Russellian sense, which I didn't realize. But he was heavily influenced, Fazer was, by the analysis of matter and like Russellian structuralism, which, so am I. And he also, this is the weird specific thing, he said like he had this book by Michael Martin, and he had like this religious landlord, and he always felt really uncomfortable when his landlord would come in, because the spine of the book has the word atheism in huge letters on it. And he's like, I felt like this was like a giant middle finger, like to him every time he walked in. I literally turned this book around on my shelf, like when my parents come over. Like I was like, dude, that is a very specific thing I relate to.
That's really funny. No, yeah. this book that I only just started a few days ago, but you know who actually recommended it to me was the Real Atheology team. I talked to some of those guys and they were telling me that like, oh, you grew up Tradcath, you should read The Unnecessary Science because you know you grew up on Ed Phaser, right? Or as I call him, Diet Aquinas. So they said you'll get a big kick out of it. So I'm only like 20% of the way through the book, but I'm enjoying it so far.
Yeah, that was probably
I mean,
August. He's he's one of the Relay Theology guys who's like really sympathetic to Catholicism and has like really put in a ton of work trying to understand the Thomist stuff. But yeah, August is great.
yeah. And then I saw that you. This was while I was trying to join and I was having audio problems. I saw you pull up one of the Incorrupt Saints. Was it Saint Francis Xavier or something like that?
Yeah.
So I run a teeny tiny little channel where I kind of talk about like Tradcaths stuff, and I've done like way too much homework on Incorrupt Saints.
Okay. Oh, tell me about it, because I was just like I knew about it first through the X-Files, because there's
Really?
like there's someone who dies. He's like he thinks he's selected by God to like protect this child or something, and he dies at some point, and like his body is just not decomposing, like it's not going through like rigor mortis or anything. And Scully, who's like a Catholic, it's like the only thing she's not skeptical about. And which there's this really funny part where she like turns to Mulder in frustration and it's just like, so what, like everything is real except God? And I'm like, oh, relatable. But yeah, but anyway, that was just like the first time I heard about it, that like, oh, there are saints who supposedly like they don't really decompose. So I mean, I only recently learned about this, but yeah, you so tell me about it.
So there's a lot of weird stuff. So I guess if you don't know anything about it and you grow up learning about this stuff, the traditional story is always that these saints are totally incorrupt to this day. Some of them died like 800 years ago and stuff like that. And they'll show you these pictures of incorrupt saints. And if you Google like certain incorrupt saints, you'll find, like if you Google Saint John Marie Vianney, he died 200 some odd years ago. And he looks fantastic. Like it looks like he like fell asleep. Turns out that's a wax mask. Like, yeah. And they don't tell you this unless like you really dig for it. And the Catholic Church would be like, well, like we weren't hiding the fact that that's actually a wax mask over a corpse. And so then, they're generally dressed from head to foot, including like wearing gloves and stuff like that and shoes.
Mm-hmm.
And then the only exposed skin is, generally speaking, a wax mask for their face. So you're not actually looking at any part of their actual body. And then there are other saints like Saint Francis Xavier, who's incorrupt and he's mummified. Like it's like you look at him and you're like, he's dead. Like he's very much so dead.
Yeah, imagine this is like what hope do you have for the resurrection if this is God miraculously like preserving a body? Like,
yeah. And I don't know if you're familiar with some of the weird stories about like the smell. Do you know about the smell?
Like roses and stuff?
Yep. And what's really funny is that there was a saint from Italy who died in like the 13th century. Her name was Saint Catherine. And see, I'm gonna have to like go reference the script that I wrote to actually get the full thing. But she died. They dug her body up like 200 years later, and she was incorrupt. And they dug her up like 200 years after that, and she was like incorrupt again. And so the church canonized her, and then after they canonized her, they're like, we should actually probably see if we can find like medical records. And it turns out that she was embalmed right after she died. And it's like, okay. And they never examined her body because Catholics, in particular, like trad Catholics, are very, I'm trying to think of like a charitable way to say it. They will go at great lengths to preserve people's, to not look at any more skin than they have to. So even with this dead body, they didn't actually disrobe the dead body. And if they had, they would have found huge incisions on the insides of the thighs, like over in the rib area, where they actually sucked out a lot of her fluids and like replaced it with like embalming stuff, like, you know, primitive embalming, right? Because this was the 13th century or whatever.
Yeah.
But it's just really funny when you look into like the Catholic Church's great intellectual tradition, and then you find out that so much of people's faiths, like, I mean, mine was, it was built on these incorrupt saints
Yeah.
who aren't nearly as incorrupt as you think they are.
Yeah, I mean, because when you look at them, like you said, the ones that I've seen just kind of look like mummies. Like they kind of look like they are, yeah, or like possibly embalmed or something. I mean, it's not hard to come up with like a skeptical explanation of this, first of all. But even if you just grant, like, yeah, no, naturally they are decomposing at a wildly, abnormally slow rate. Like even if you grant that, which why wouldn't that be possible? Why wouldn't there be like a super far end of the bell curve for like really fast decomposition and really slow decomposition, especially with like environmental variables? And you think like, okay, that's an interesting scientific question. But when you say like, oh, God did it, it's just kind of like, it's like, that doesn't seem like the best explanation to me when I'm looking at this like like a mummified face. Like he's just decomposing really slowly, and that's interesting. That should be like studied and everything. But damn. Oh, what's up, Julian? How's it going?
Hey, what's up? How are you guys doing?
Pretty
Pretty
good.
good, man. How about you?
Good.
Oh, what's your channel name, by the way, Kevin?
So it's just Kevin non-Tradcath. And I just do these super lame, like 45-minute long, like video essays about like Marian apparitions and stuff like that, and why I used to buy them and why I no longer do. So
have you ever spoken to Caleb Jackson about miracles?
No, I haven't. My channel is pretty small, so I don't get a chance to talk to a ton of people. But
Okay.
But
Yeah.
but I have had Dr. Jim Madden on my show a number of times. He's a Catholic PhD philosopher.
Yeah.
And
philosophy for the people, right? Is that his channel?
so that's run by Pat Flynn, and Dr. Madden is just a longtime guest of the show Philosophy.
Oh,
People.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Didn't mean to steal anything, but thanks for asking the name of my channel. It's real small and it's probably not super interesting to most people. So
well, it's just the miracle stuff. Like you said, like these like miracle stories do play a role in why people believe, and like they do cling to them. And like I just think it's an interesting argument that's like somewhat neglected by philosophers, because it requires a bunch of like historical knowledge and like it requires a bunch of like specialized knowledge about stories from history and stuff. Like you have to do so much almost like journalistic work to really talk about it, that, you know, I can kind of see why it's neglected. But still, if you happen to know a lot about it, then it's interesting to like look into the cases, especially with like the incorruptibility stuff.
Yeah, and that's kind of why I started my channel, is because I noticed that like nobody else was really talking about it on YouTube except for more or less. And I knew that some of this stuff was not what it seemed, and I wanted to just kind of get some of that at least onto YouTube to get people talking about it. So that's kind of like what my project is.
Yeah, I'd love to get you in touch with Caleb Jackson, because I have a nothing channel. He came on talking to Emerson and I a little bit about miracle stuff, and it seems like you're more well read about the Marian apparition stuff. So that would be quite interesting. I
go hard on the Marian apparitions. That's like a big part of like, because I grew up with those stories, you know, like I almost said, did you guys like grow up watching like the movie about Our Lady of Fatima and the movie about Our Lady of Lourdes from the 1940s and the 1950s? And of course you didn't.
No, I can tell you a lot about the Left Behind series, but
yeah.
Cool.
No, I did go on Gabe's channel, and then I reposted it on mine, where we were talking with Caleb and Jonathan Becker and Gabe about like miracles, and they were, you know, it's a really good conversation. Not thanks to me. I was like rambling about vampires and TV shows for 90% of the conversation, but it was a good conversation thanks to them.
Cool.
No, I mean,
hey, why don't I go ahead and
I find that it's actually quite hard for me to encounter people who are very well read on some of those particular miracle claims. Actually, like for me, I find it hard to delve into it. I think a certain journalistic mindset or having familiarity with it. You said since you were, I think, a kid, right? Just kind of.
Oh yeah. So the chapel that my grandparents founded is called Our Lady of Fatima Chapel. And so like everybody at my church was all about how like, you know, Our Lady of Fatima predicted World War II, and she predicted like the fall of the Soviet Union and like all of these things. Like it was like a big part of like daily life for me growing up. So that's why I'm like, you know, interested in it and stuff.
Cool. Yeah, that's interesting. I'll have to check out your channel for sure.
Well, cool. Thank you.
Julian, what's up? What brings you onto the to this open hangout, which is an original idea I coined. Never been done before.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I grew up Catholic as well. Actually, until recently, like I was Catholic until very recently. It was kind of David Bentley Hart that led me out of believing in hell, which led me out of Catholicism. But yeah, I don't know. I guess I just wanted to hang out. I don't know. Are you just talking about miracles right now, or open up?
Yeah, or anything else. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, actually, I guess we're still with miracles. I watched a debate a while ago with, I don't remember, it was Alex Malpass talking about fine tuning. I think the argument he made applies to miracles. He said his argument was against fine tuning was basically that for any like unexplained phenomenon, you can always say like, oh, well, the explanation is that an omnipotent being desired it to be the case. And that's just always going to be like ad hoc, because you can just use that to explain anything. You say, oh, this guy, he's incorrupt. Okay, well, I know what the explanation is. An omnipotent being desired it to be the case. And like, I don't know. You can't make any predictions with it. You can't falsify it at all. So, yeah.
Yeah, I got drawn in by the Redeemed Zoomer title. So good job. Good job on the title, Emerson, for sure.
I did not know that guy existed until just like a week ago or something.
I constantly see his stuff. I hear it on other people's phones who are people who are fairly close to me. So he's out and about for sure.
Yeah, he seems to like.
Catholic?
No, he's Presbyterian.
Presbyterian. Okay.
Yeah. He's probably very anti-Catholic.
He might be.
I mean, he does kind of seem like if you spend too much time on Twitter like I do, then he seems like Eastern Orthodox or like Tradcaths or something. Like he just has those vibes. But if you look at his channel, he's like, I'm a Presbyterian Minecraft YouTuber who thinks I love Presbyterianism, but it's just like so liberal, and I hate that about it. And I want to turn it more into like the Tradcath like kind of vibe or something. So that's why he gives off those like weird like EO or like Catholic vibes.
He's a Presbyterian bro. Is that a thing? Like an ortho bro, but a Presbyterian.
He's a
Presby bro.
He's a base Presby.
Well,
maybe Presby. That's right.
Maybe that goes out to you guys. Like, do you consider him like low-hanging fruit? Like, what do you guys think about that when you hear that criticism? Like, oh, you're not criticizing the best that say Christian philosophy has to offer. And I'm just like, I don't know. I hear his stuff more in the churches that I go to and stuff. So I don't know what you guys think about that, but I think it's fair game as long as it's popular and it's out there.
Yeah, I think as long as if you're saying like, oh, I'm going to debunk Christianity, here's why Redeemed Zoomer's wrong, and this debunks Christianity, then like that's probably bad. But like if you're saying like, here's a bad argument, it's very popular, here's why it's wrong, I don't see a problem with that.
Yeah, it just depends what your goals are. Like if you want to like just like engage in activism or something and be like, well, look, this is what's popular and everyone's like, so I mean, either you want to further like philosophical atheism or you want to improve Christianity. Like it seems like you would behave in similar kinds of ways, which I think is why like universalists and atheists often end up on like the same team in many cases. And I think like, okay, that's one goal, but if you're just personally trying to like figure out whether God exists, then there's no point listening to Redeemed Zoomer about any topic ever. But like this was just like for fun, but like yeah, it is kind of low-hanging fruit and it's astoundingly popular, and like yeah, that's worth responding to. It's not going to get you closer to the truth about whether God exists, but it's just worth doing for other reasons, I think.
Well, it's so tough because I feel like some of the more sophisticated arguments, they're oftentimes just so niche. Like I just don't talk about them very much with other Christians because it's like, okay, you kind of need to get deprogrammed and then reprogrammed for any sort of useful conversation to have. And unless you're like up for delving into a bunch of new philosophical concepts new to you, you know, and I'm not even going to pretend that I'm an amazing philosopher or something, but it's like, that's going to take quite a bit of time. Like Christians aren't talking about that stuff.
Yeah, true. Like if you're going to address what's like relevant and like what's, you know, actually influencing a huge number of people, then you're never going to get to the best arguments for God. Like you're never going to get to like the most sophisticated defenses of theism because those wield no influence whatsoever among like 98% of Christians.
Agreed on that.
Yeah, I've only, like, you know, growing up Catholic, I've only ever ran into one person that, you know, knew who Ed Fazer was or whatever, used those kinds of arguments. He was a convert. But yeah, I mean, for people who grow up Catholic, like, it's extremely rare that you'll ever run into someone that's going to use like a rigorous philosophical argument.
I might only push back a little bit there to say if you grew up Catholic, like Novus Ordo Catholic, which is like non-trad, in the Tradisphere, it's actually like the Tradisphere is the Ed Fazer fan club. So
is it really?
Yeah.
I didn't grow up in the Tradisphere.
Okay, yeah. So in like at my trad Catholic chapel, like we were all like big on Thomas Aquinas, and since Aquinas was difficult to read, Fazer was, you know, the go-to kind of. So
he is a great writer. I love the way he writes.
I wonder how he feels about that.
I love the way that Fazer writes his sometimes, but like the way that he writes his tweets, he comes across as just like very mean, like very mean.
Yeah, he does.
I don't know.
A lot of those trad accounts do though. Like I don't know why they feel like really warranted. They feel like justified in like being really cruel and dismissive and yeah, I don't know where that like kind of like they're acting like they're like, you know, crusaders, but like in the posting division or something.
Well, they're the ones with the secret knowledge that's going to lead them to you're all going to burn in hell. So they. Yeah.
No, for sure. I mean, I grew up believing that like not only were all the Protestants going to go to hell, but pretty much everyone who wasn't a trad Catholic was going to go to hell. Because even the Catholics who aren't trad like aren't doing the Catholic thing right. And so like when you fervently believe that you have the secret knowledge and nobody else does, you're going to develop like a superiority complex for sure. I know I did up until like 5 years ago.
I think there's also, I'm not saying this is all of it. I think it feeds into that though is this idea that most Tradcaths are probably more well-read on Christian history than the average person. And so I think there's something to that feeds into this. Oh, I just know I'm more intellectual. I know more historical knowledge than you. I think that's where you start reifying people like Thomas Aquinas and stuff like that. And that's why it's such a breath of fresh air whenever Ryan Mullins participated in a recent response video to Gavin Ortland on divine simplicity. And it was just so refreshing to hear like someone who is used to like historical criticism on these matters being like, yeah, these Christians here were just like gaslighting because they didn't have an argument. And these Christians over here, like, we're not quite sure exactly what they were trying to argue for because it seems rather unintelligible. And it's just kind of nice to be like, listen, we get it. There's a lot of people who have said some very smart things in the past, but that doesn't mean all the things that they said were quite good. And so I think there's a lot of that. It's like, oh, we've had this knowledge passed down historically, you know, from the very beginning, or at least a deposit of some sort. And I think that feeds into that mentality a little bit.
So, as somebody who grew up Tradcat, I was taught revisionist history. So like I would say that Tradcats will tell you that they have like a really good knowledge of history, but they don't. So like I'm not just talking about like we legitimately learned that the Inquisition was kind of fine. Like the Inquisition wasn't that big of a deal. Like stop complaining. It's like, you know. but like straight up, like slavery was a good thing. I'm not kidding. We learned in school that slavery was a good
Like
thing,
American slavery?
and that like yes, and that women's suffrage was a mistake.
Jeez.
Wild stuff. Yeah. So we learned. Yeah, it's pretty crazy. That I that I turned out the way that I did. I think. I mean, you know, you could see tattoos. I've got long hair. Like I don't associate with trad Catholicism anymore. Very publicly so.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, that's a pretty common
Yeah.
take I see on Twitter is like, yeah, don't let women vote. Like, yeah, slavery was not really like this horrible evil. Like it was like practiced everywhere, and it's just not that big of a deal.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
And
remember-
that's Aristotelian for you. Aristotle like would argue from natural law that slavery was fine. So
I would be super. This is just pure speculation on my part, but I would be super interested to know, like in online discussions, like if the more confident, like more arrogantly confident a person comes off in comments, like the correlation between like how much they actually know on the topic or how like good their arguments are. I don't even know how you would even test that out, but there's something where it's like just now I've started to realize that's because you would think that confidence would carry this. Oh, this person's very confident about this, right? They must know something, or they must like really have good reasons, right? And just coming to realize that like the amount of confidence someone has almost no bearing on how good their argument may or may not be. There's a lot of very like, I wouldn't say timid, but people who are very calm in their demeanor when they're portraying things, who are very, very smart. And there's a lot of very confident people who are quite confident, whether they have reason to be so or not.
Yeah, there's like a Bertrand Russell quote, like there are intelligent people who are filled with self-doubt and a lot of really unintelligent people who are extremely confident. Yeah.
Yeah, and I do think an online discussion, there's almost like an online style of discussion now too, where if you've interacted with somebody who kind of acts in that way, it kind of rubs off. I will fully admit this for me. And so like the moment you can, put some sort of barbed insults, weave them into your discourse, you're much more likely to do that now. So at least for me anyways.
Yeah, I feel like Twitter has made me like more combative and like more likely to like overreact to, like I'll just like look at an argument or something and like not even give it a chance. Like I'll just be looking for some way of like, how can I take what they said and like dunk on it or something? And like that's just a horrible way to approach like any kind of discussion.
I mean, I think it's a bias. It's almost hard to fully compensate for. If you just fall on one side of discussion, unless someone is like, you're like, clearly this person doesn't know what they're talking about, you tend to be looking for the redeeming qualities in someone who is a proponent for your side and looking for what are the holes, what are the errors. And I often find that it's like, oh, wow, when's the last time I looked at that and being like, ooh, how can I make that argument stronger? Or how could I find the good elements of it and build something that's, oh, maybe you're onto something there. So.
Well, I might sign off here soon for reaching like a natural endpoint. But yeah, thank you guys for coming on. This was fun. I might do this more often, actually. And if anyone copies my idea of like an open hangout, then I just want I want you to know that it happened here first, and it's trademarked, and I demand royalties. All right.
Like
See
a
you
fun
guys.
deal, isn't it?
thanks for having us.
Good talking to you, Emerson. Have a good one.
Bye.
Bye.